Good morning to all newly elected mayors, councillors, JTG traditional leaders, government officials, SIOC-CDT board and trustees, our donor Kumba Iron Ore representatives, our development partners, members of the media, and invited guests. Welcome to the 2021 second hybrid annual Stakeholders Day event hosted by SIOC-CDT. Last year was our first foray into hosting this event digitally, and we hope that this year's event is even better. We wish to thank our radio partners Kurara FM and Waterberg Stereo for broadcasting this event to help make it as accessible as possible, and we thank everyone for attending either in person or via the digital platforms. To open up the day's events, I must start with acknowledging how the last 2 years have tested all of us. South Africa, along with the rest of the world, has encountered challenges that we could not even have imagined. I am proud of how resilient we all have shown ourselves to be within the midst of such hardships. As chairperson of the SIOC-CDT Board of Trustees, I am also very proud of how SIOC-CDT have stepped up to the plate during an unprecedented pandemic situation and how the partnerships that have been forged with beneficiary communities, government, NGOs, and so many more entities have enabled us all to work together to do the very best we can to defend people's lives and livelihoods. As the board, we are pleased by how accurately SIOC-CDT maintained its governance processes and controls during the last 2 years. In 2020 and 2021, a large part of SIOC-CDT's attention and resources across all its focus areas assisted with the fight against the COVID-19 pandemic. Procurement scandals have rocked many sectors in South Africa, but we are pleased to report that SIOC-CDT can account for every cent spent. We can also say that no corruption or wasteful expenditure tarnished our projects in the past financial year. There were a lot of pivots in terms of the implementation of our focus areas. SIOC-CDT's three-pronged community development strategy targets the areas of education, of training, and of skills development. It also targets enterprise and supply development and community health and social welfare. All of these target areas were impacted by the reality of COVID-19, and the presentation today will take you through a lot of detail of how these focal areas were revised to meet the immediate as well as the sustainable needs of the beneficiary communities. COVID-19 also initially delayed the election of community representative trustees to the board by hampering the in-person awareness campaigns and voting process. Nevertheless, we overcame the obstacles and are proud to welcome 2 new community representative trustees to the board. From the Gamagara local municipality, Mr. Nico Andreas, and representing Sansabani, Mr. Sabuza Botha. An independent election agency facilitated their free and fair election. We will be conducting the election of the Tabazimbi municipality representative trustee in the first quarter of next year to ensure compliance with the trust deed, as well as to ensure that all beneficiary areas have representation on the board. My sincere hope is, as you listen to today's reports, that you will be as proud as we are of the work that has been done in the last year. I also take this opportunity to thank every person who helps to keep the CDT accountable and transparent. Every beneficiary, every partner, and every stakeholder whose sincere feedback helps to make the CDT better as an organization. I invite you to continue with us on this journey towards lasting change. SIOC-CDT remains committed to contributing to sustainable community development of our beneficiaries. I also want to take this opportunity to introduce all the new trustees that joined the CDT over the last year. From the donor side, from Anglo-American SIOC side, Ms. Ayonda Makoko. As a non-executive donor trustee, Dr. Pranil Ramchanda, also from the donor. Non-executive director and independent trustee from JTG, Ms. Masashaba Mabilu. Non-executive and independent director for CDT, Mr. Pop Motsisi. And as mentioned before, from Sansabani, the new members from Sobiza Bota, and also Nico Andreas from Gamagara. Finally, I want to take this opportunity to thank all the ongoing and retired trustees. I furthermore want to thank you and hand you over into the capable hands of the CEO and his team, Mr. Vuzani Mali. I thank you for this opportunity to address you.
Thank you, Llewellyn. Dumelang Bagaishu, as the chairman has welcomed you so heartily. Welcome to our Stakeholder Day. This is the second time, as mentioned, that we are using this platform. You all know that our preferred platform is when we are in a big room and we all engage robustly together. But we certainly have reason to engage this way. I happened upon this slide this morning as I was preparing. We sadly have increased infection rate. Yesterday's rate was number 8,561 of new cases. So the decision that we made to have this Stakeholder Day held in this platform was not an easy one. We knew already that the scientists and the specialists were telling us that we would be in the throes of a fourth wave. We do know that that announcement has not been made yet officially, but if you look at the numbers, I mean, just 2 months ago, we were at less than 100 of new cases. We are now at 8,000. The experts are talking about tracking to 10,000 a day soon. So we are aware that certain beneficiaries would have preferred to have this in an open forum, as we usually do. And we have received some criticism that this decision does not take into account that a lot of our beneficiaries do not have access to digital platforms. We have made arrangements with our radio media partners, and we are quite confident that we'll reach a greater number of our beneficiaries. But we thought that your safety comes first. So this is why we preferred to do it this way. And we are grateful, as the chairman has mentioned, to our media partners for making this possible. It's quite a unique thing. We're doing it for the second time. We hope next year things will be better, but we think it works. So the business of the day is on the slide right now. We'll move very quickly to the presentation and talk about the year, including our year-to-date position for 2021. Just to start, to remind all of you that our vision, mission, and mandate hasn't changed. We're still focusing on influencing a different reality for our communities beyond the mining activities of our donor, Kumba Iron Ore. You know that we receive income from our investments, which include the 3% that we hold in the donor, which we use to fund our activities. So our vision is still the same. I have spoken also about our strategic outcomes, I think in the last Stakeholder Day last year, where we said, and I said to you, that we're focusing on delivering successful projects from a diversified income stream with a capable organization and a brand of SIOC-CDT that is strongly rooted within our communities. So we do development with our communities, for our communities. The chairman has also mentioned that there have been new directors that have come in We are expecting that in the strategy session that the new board is going to have in March 2022, these strategic outcomes will have to be looked into and revised. So maybe they will change, I do not know. But for the year under review, this has been our North Star and our guiding principles. Also to remind you that we presented our community development strategy last year, where we spoke about what our intention is. So our intention is to catalyze a future that will see our communities stay resilient beyond the life of mine, which is the operations of Sishen Mine and Kolomela Mine. And we want to do that by engaging in activities that influence household income through education and entrepreneur development. We also want to be able to respond to shocks that impact our communities and make sure that the most vulnerable members of our communities are protected from shocks. And we saw that with COVID-19, we saw that with the storms in the Northern Cape that ripped our infrastructure apart, that organizations like SIOC-CDT should be able to assist where they can. Again, just as a reminder slide, we do know that the income that we make is made up of the Kumba dividend, including our investment returns. Our trust deed that we speak about quite extensively in all our platforms allows us a maximum of 30% of the dividend that we've received for investment purposes and leaves us with 70% for community development projects. Now, when we talk about the investments, we just would like to share with you what our view of the world is. We have an investment strategy that informs how we should invest. So when we talk about strategic asset allocation, we're talking about the percentages that we should ideally have as a spread for investments, how we're going to be applying that 30% that we are allowed to use. And just to remind you, the reason why we have investments is to make sure that we buttress the balance sheet of SIOC-CDT and to make sure that when the time comes for Sishen Mine to close and Kolomela Mine to close its operations, as happened in Thabazimbi, we have a strong and diversified income stream that will make sure that we continue doing our work beyond the life of mine. So this pie chart that I have on the slide just depicts how we see the world in terms of investment, how an organization like us should invest. And we can take, questions on detail on this. But yes, this is how we would like, and we're working towards this spread in the next few years. So we have spoken a bit about the investments. Now I just want to go into a little bit of detail into our beneficiary footprint. You know that our beneficiary footprint is set out in the trust deed, and the trust deed talks about the JTG district with its 4 municipalities. It also talks about 3 municipalities, It also talks about Zanzabane local municipality. It also talks about Thabazimbi municipality. What I've also done with this slide is to overlay it with specifics on spending in those areas. And this is a question that comes up quite often when we have engagements within the municipality where community members want to know. We know that you are busy in JTG district up to Thabazimbi in Limpopo province, but we specifically would like to know what you have done in our municipality. And I think this kind of disclosure is encouraged, and this is how we're going to continue to talk to you about how we have applied the project available spend. So we just go through a few. You can see that in Jomorolong, our spend in 2020 was 35 million. Our year-to-date spend, which means up to the end of September this year, is in the region of 40 million. Now, what I want to specifically talk about is, if you look at the spread and the spend, you can see that there are municipalities that have lagged behind, and specifically Tsansabane. Tsansabane for a while has seen not so much investment in projects that have scale. If you measure it on a rand spend basis, you'll see that last year we did 5 million. The year to date this year is 15 million. And Thabazimbi is another case in point. Whilst the number in Thabazimbi is the biggest for this year and last year, I want to remind you that Thabazimbi has had a backlog of what we call legacy projects, which are long overdue. These are projects that were approved by the board in 2012, which we hadn't gotten around to executing them because of a variety of reasons. So what it then means is that we are going to come to the board in March, prioritize these areas that I've highlighted, and also increase our stakeholder engagement with our local government partners as well as the community at large to determine what the development priorities and initiatives should be that we should prioritize. So we are mindful of that, and we're saying that whilst we are responsible for the entire footprint, just as in the previous years, we have focused a lot on the legacy projects in Kamakara, we are going to have to do the same with Tsansabane and Thabazimbi. And I also want to add that we will be done with the Thabazimbi legacy projects, which I will speak about in later slides. Now we just come to financial disclosure. It's very important that as an organization that values transparency, we do talk to you about the income that we have received and also what we have done with it. So the year 2020, we received a dividend from Kumba Iron Ore of 805 million, which is 31% more than what we received in 2019, a number of 614 million. We also received investment income. Now this is income coming out, which is other than the dividend, which is money that we are generating from our other investment activities. This is what we are focusing on growing, which will build in the sustainability that I spoke about. So there again, it's a bit of a story. We made 138 million in 2020, which is 5% less than the 146 that we made in 2019. And you'll recall that that year, the Reserve Bank started tapering down on interest rates, so that affected a big part of our portfolio, which is our cash investments. More on finances. That boost in dividend that I spoke about saw our cash holdings, which is a very important part of our investment approach. They increased year on year by 26% from 1.3 billion as we closed the year in 2019 to 1.7 billion as we closed the year in 2020. So we think that a good cash management strategy, as well as a prudent asset allocation model, going back to that pie chart that I showed earlier, are the ingredients of ensuring the sustainability of SIOC-CDT beyond the life of mine. The combination of that strong dividend performance and the growth of our investment portfolio saw us grow the net assets of the organization by 90% from 2018, which is a testament of our commitment to the sustainability of this organization. I emphasize that part of the reason why SIOC-CDT was established was to make sure that it outlives the operations of Kumba Iron Ore and continue delivering on its mandate beyond the life of mine. So this, for us, is crucially important. We need to make sure that we stay focused on the goal of growing the net asset base of the company, of the organization, and also focusing on growing the non-Kumba dividend income. So on the investment report, that continued resilience and robust performance by Kumba Iron Ore saw us receive a record dividend of 949 million in March 2021, which brought the total receivable for 2021 to 1.5 billion. This then boosts our cash reserves to close the year at 2.6 billion after our investment activities. We're going to talk a little bit about that. So with all of this, the next slide just depicts our investment portfolio. In it, you will see we have the donor at the top, which accounts for 51%, and then we have the rest of the portfolio, which is outside of the donor. You will see that the donor accounts for 51% of the total, and our net asset value as at 31st September 2021 is an impressive 7.9 billion, just shy of 8 billion. This, again, is testament to the board and management's commitment that our diversification strategy is beginning to yield fruit, because what you need to do to manage an organization like SIOC-CDT is to ensure that you de-risk the organization from a single source of revenue. And we know, and as experienced in Kumba, and you'll see what happens when life happens to our donor. There is a dip, and the whole town of Kathu and Postmasburg feels the pain. So what we need to do is to make sure that we cushion the organization from those ups and downs. So again, here is a pictorial of our portfolio. You will see on the left is an investment that we're very proud of, which is the Kathu Hotel, which again, as you know, the reasons for us investing in that was to harvest not only economic returns, but also social dividend by providing employment and downstream business opportunities there. So we're very proud of this business. It did take a beating in 2020 with COVID-19 and with the lockdowns, which impacted tourism. But we are happy to say that it has shown great resilience and has returned to profit. The first, second, and third quarter of 2021 has been really great for the business, and we're hoping that it's going to continue. Airlink, similarly, is a business that is aligned to who we are. You know that there are daily flights to Kathu, and that improves tourism and business in our beneficiary area. It itself has had some difficulties with COVID-related restrictions, and especially when inter-provincial travel was closed down by government. But I'm glad to say that it's also a resilient business, which has shown, whilst other airlines closed down during this period, it is still operating. We have the donor in the middle, and then we have the diversified portfolio. I just would like to point out that Kumba Iron Ore and the solar park that is also in Kathu, which was established, we invested in it, and we explained when we did that investment that what we're looking at there is a long-term position which times the life of mine of Sishen Mine, which means that we anticipate that when the dividend of Sishen coming from Sishen Mine dries up, we would have finished paying the equity debt portion of Kathu Solar Park, and will be into cash flows in there, which will then replace the dividend. And with that, we are hoping that we can continue with our work and not be so impacted by any slowdown or closure of any of the Kumba mines. We do know that life of mine is a number that they work on, and I think that recently they announced an expectation. We're quite hopeful, would like to stay the journey together with our donor for longer than what we have anticipated. We're looking forward to it. Again, the new things that you'll see on this slide: future growth, Old Mutual, private equity fund, and Prudential are part of our diversification strategies, where we are trying now to go into other asset classes which we haven't been into before, just to balance out the portfolio and make sure that our income profile can go through the knocks and make sure that we still are able to deliver on our promises. Now we come to probably the important part of this presentation. I've spoken about how much money we made from Kumba and from our investment activities. I now want to talk about what we did with that money. A little bit of history. We do recall that 2015, 2016, and 2017, were difficult years for our donor. The global iron ore and steel market was in trouble. We saw unprecedented losses in that counter, which also resulted in the Kumba board taking the responsible decision to suspend dividends. So you'll see that our spend hit a peak. This is invoices paid, this is money paid for projects. This is a depictor of the level of activity within SIOC-CDT. We peaked at 170 million in 2016, and then there was a steep fall-off in 2017. And the reasons for that I've just mentioned. Part of the reason why activities also dropped is that, if you recall, we had just gone through our reorganization exercise, which saw us change the operating model of the organization and the creation of a one SIOC-CDT and the assimilation of what used to be called the representative trust. So we had to go through a painful process of building capacity and making sure that we can be properly set up in terms of our strategic outputs of a capable organization to be able to implement projects. So you'll see a steady build-up, if you follow the red trend line, in executional capacity, and we hit quite an impressive number if you look at the base in 2020 of 128 million. We are predicting that with our year-to-date in the region of 180, 190 million, that we will be just shy of 200 million for 2021. Management is telling me, my colleagues, that we probably will go beyond that. I'm really hopeful that we do. Now, just an important point about this slide. Whilst total rand spend is not necessarily an indicator of impact created, because the impact must be felt by bodies on the ground, it is a leading indicator on the activity levels within an organization. And I must say that you can underestimate how complicated it is to spend significant amounts if you're doing the right thing. So you need to set up and you need to make sure that your controls are in place and you can account for each and every cent. And as our chairman has alluded to earlier, we can, because we are audited quite extensively, externally and independently. So these numbers for an organization of the size of SIOC-CDT are quite a stretch, but we are focused on delivering what it is that we agree with you, our beneficiaries, that we are going to deliver. Now, I'm now going to go into the different subsets of focus areas. The chairman did speak about what we do. Our focus areas are education, training and skills development, health and welfare, as well as enterprise and supply development funding. So I'm going to talk about our big focus area first, which is education. Now, in education, even though it is not as visible as an infrastructure project, where you are in the built environment, where you can see brownfield, greenfields, and a building going up, and contractors being involved, and all of that. This is where we spend a lot of our time and focus, because if you remember, what we're trying to do is to make sure that we provide an environment where the bulk of our young community members can achieve the level of education and skills that will make sure that they're employable and they're able to participate in the economy, to make sure that by the time the mines close down, our income at a household level is protected, because we now have skills that cushion us from what is happening in the mining space. So the development of secondary industry and the training of skills that are not necessarily mine-facing is quite key. So we have an extensive education program led by Dr. Trevor van Loo. Those of you that are involved in the sector will know and know of our activities. So here we have an available budget of about 233 million. Available budget talks to projects that have been approved by the board and are open and are either multi-year and so here we're saying this is what we are going to do as a matter of must, and we owe it to our beneficiaries to deliver on this amount. These are not new projects or projects that are still going to be proposed. These are projects that have been approved. So we're going to talk about the expenditure as far as these projects are concerned and what they are, and then talk about the numbers that are much more important than the rands. How many people have we touched? So last year we spent 61 million in education, and you'll know that 61 million might look like a small number, but in the context of schools being closed for a better part of the year, this was quite a difficult thing to achieve. Our year-to-date spend this year is 89 million. The forecast is that we're going to hit a much higher number because for the most part schools have been open and our initiatives have been going on. I'm just going to touch on a few. I know that these slides are going to be available, but what we like to talk about with our stakeholders and you, our beneficiaries, is the numbers. If we just take perhaps ECD practitioners and supporting in-service teachers, where we focus on training the educator to make sure that they are ascend to higher levels of educational qualification, which then improves their teaching practice and their pedagogical skills. So we've had 144 graduates in 2020, and 96% of these graduates, which are teachers, have stayed in the schools where they came from. We have created 420 new opportunities for 2021, and there are various programs that are spread across our footprint that we are going to roll out. Another one that I want to just focus on is the bursary scheme, and there's a reason for that. We have 60 new opportunities for 2021, so that adds to the number of students that we are funding, and our funding is what we call wraparound, which covers tuition, stipend, education material, that's books, and the most important one, which is accommodation, which makes sure that the psychosocial environment and context of the student allows them to focus on their studies. Now, we urge you, our beneficiaries, to please talk to your children that are in grade 11, grade 12, and help them as well to apply for SIOC-CDT bursaries. It's quite discouraging at times to see that when we close applications, we have a lower number of students that meet the criteria than what we had planned for. So it is very, very important that we emphasize this message that we are getting towards the end of the year now. Matric learners, I think, are still writing or have finished. Some have finished. Let us just focus on the applications to tertiary institutions and make sure that those applications on our website, which we publicize, we do school visits, we talk to SGPs and headmasters to make sure that the students are aware. It's so sad to find a deserving student midway the year that when I take a drive in the community, sometimes I do talk to young people, and somebody will tell me they didn't know about this bursary. They would have applied, or they did apply, but they didn't go in because of funding. So it's quite important. But this slide talks about the detail of our education initiatives that are open. I'm not going to read each and every number in there. We have the objective on the left, and we have the actual performance. And these numbers are numbers that in our monitoring and evaluation effort, we verify. Now, in education, we also have a obligation or a strategic imperative to assist where there are infrastructure requirements or deficiencies. So we, as you know, we have been involved in repairing schools or building new classrooms and the like. And in 2020 and 2021, we're focusing on schools in Tawazimbi, part of the legacy projects that I spoke to. I'm just going to share quite a few slides quickly on the projects in education that relate to infrastructure. The first one is Groenvlei. Groenvlei is a very impressive facility in Tawazimbi. As you go towards, you pass the Lepalale turnoff. This was a renovation of an old building and an addition of a new block of classrooms and ablution. It benefits approximately 250 learners. The approved budget there is 31 million. We've spent about 11 million to date. Importantly, whilst infrastructure projects is not necessarily our strongest point from a setup point of view, we do involve ourselves in projects of necessity. There also is another imperative that we focus here. We strictly contract with contractors that are previously disadvantaged, and we also make sure that we have tie-ups there that can add impetus to our contractor development strategy, which ticks the box on our entrepreneur and supplier development program. So with this particular one, 36 jobs were created and there were 8 SMEs that were supported. This would be what you normally call the SABIs, to an amount of 1.4 million. So this project is ongoing, it's almost done. We're going to be handing over the school. It's a very impressive facility and we're very proud of having been part of its revival. The next one is a school hall within the Tawazimbi area, which is called Mabokopedi. This is quite an imposing structure that was approved by the board 2012. It's a community stroke school hall. So it will be used for examinations for that Mabokopedi High School and also for community events. It will benefit, I mean, that's a big school. There's about 1,000 learners in there. And the community around that area of Lekgorogile will also benefit in this project. The approved budget of this was 23 million. We've spent about 7 million so far. We've created 34 jobs. 9 SMEs were supported to the tune of 2 million. And the main contractor from Bulugwane is quite an impressive outfit because this is a very complex project with a lot of engineering. In fact, it is almost similar to the multi-purpose center that we built in Katu, in Maputeng. So we're quite enthused by the fact that we have a local contractor that is executing this project on budget, on time, and is also benefiting smaller SMEs. This we're quite proud of. And the last one is a smaller primary school in Chrome Mine area in the Platinum Belt, where we added a new block of classrooms and ablution facilities, including disabled toilets there, which benefits. There's also a big number of students there. There's about 800 little ones that go to that school. So this was quite an important intervention that we undertook. This one is finished and has been brought into use. We created 47 jobs and supported 10 SMEs, including quite an intricate support package that we hardly talk about, but it's a reality in our area, in infrastructure projects, where you find that because of cash flow constraints that our contractors face, we have to conclude what we call concessions, where we help them with the acquisition of material and other related costs. So that, for this specific project, amounted to 3.9 million. And this is obviously a development area for us and our contractor partners to make sure that when we price for projects and we price accurately, we don't underprice, because that then causes cash flow constraints and leads to delays in projects. But we're happy that we have revived this and we're going to be able to hand over this to the headmaster there. Again, the budget was 20 million. We've spent about 15 million already in this, including the 3.9 million of concession. So this concludes what we are doing in education, which is the bulk of our activity area. We also have a health and welfare focus area, and as you know, this is the area which is growing, and we have a program manager there in the name of Khadim Khongwa, who has been a great help in clarifying our strategy here. And we have these projects that you are aware of. The available budget there, again, is a big number, just shy of 200 million. We spent 55 million in 2020. And this year, our year-to-date numbers at September is 87 million. We'll talk a little bit about probably Riafola. Riafola is that impressive bus and outreach program that you guys know all about. We have treated 4,460 patients in the mobile clinic, and 86% of those were from the JTG region. We also count the other social dividends here. We have a total of 5 SMEs participated in just providing goods and services on board. We've created 7 jobs, and those are sustainable jobs until 2024. And Riafola has now a program that will see it being available until 2024. Now, why is that important? Usually, these mobile health units were bought with a plan to eventually hand over to the Department of Health. And this has not taken into account the fact that the Department of Health also has got their own challenges with capacity and also managing their bricks and mortar facilities. So this then brought additional strain. Community members in the JTG area will know we started Riafola with our partners, the JTG Trust. That project is still ongoing. So this includes our participation and our collaboration with JTG Trust based in Kuruman, and we're using all of the assets, including the 3 buses in Kuruman and the big bus, to make sure that we deliver these much needed services. There are other activities that we are doing in the space. We have an eye care program that we're going to talk about a little bit later, and we're also doing quite a lot in the disability space. We have 11 children that have received mobile mobility devices, which assist them with walking and getting around. We have trained ECD practitioners on disability that enables them to be able to deal with children that present with disabilities. We've also trained parents to also be able to deal with the children. Here we specifically focused on sitting children. So there's quite a lot of individual activities that then make up that total number. And it is focused a lot in our rural areas where these government services struggle to reach. So we've got quite a wraparound approach for dealing with disabilities. And I think there's a whole lot more information about this that will be also in our social impact report. And we encourage those parents that have disabled children to engage with us to understand a little bit more about what it is that we're doing in this area. We're going to also talk about our focus. I think some parents here have teenagers that are involved in our youth at risk programs with Love Life. They will know what this is about. Again, here the numbers are on the screen. We have 10 groundbreakers and 20 pinches employed. We have entrepreneurial training programs. We have assisted some youth to acquire driving licenses. And importantly, we have established 3 new centers in Tabazimbi, Oliphants Hook, and Tsansaban. Again, in this focus area, we do find ourselves being asked to contribute or manage infrastructure projects. Because in this subset or focus area, we also look at what I referred to earlier as supporting the community from shocks and also making sure that the vulnerable in our communities are protected. So in the bottom block here, we have a housing project in Olifantshoek, we have a water project in Barbertas, we have the road project, and we have Northern Clinic. I'm going to talk about this individually very quickly. Importantly, again, as the chairman mentioned, how COVID-19 impacted our communities. This slide just depicts our response. I know we spoke a bit about that last year. Our total expenditure in this area is currently at 37 million. We are planning a phase 3, which is going to be about 8.2 million. And we're focused again on building the capacity of the healthcare system, which means that we're assisting the Department of Health with the equipment and PPE and a whole lot of other consumables that are required. Those that live in Kuruman will remember that we provided the units at Kuruman Hospital and Tshwaragano, which created the space and the ability for that hospital to have ICU and high care units to deal with COVID patients. 50 beds that we added. We spoke about this last year. That is still ongoing, and that facility is being used, and we're quite happy that with our partners we're able to erect that quite quickly, and it's coming to great use. And I'm sure that increases the capacity of the area to deal with what is now called the fourth wave, that our people are going to be able to get treatment within the areas of Patlaros and Kuruman and not have to go all the way to Kimberley. So we are quite hopeful that this and our initiatives on assisting the department on the vaccination drive are going to make sure that we manage this outbreak of COVID-19. Now, the first project that I want to talk to you about in this focus area is what we call infill housing, which is simply the removal of asbestos roofs and the renovation of dilapidated houses in the Gamagara municipality, specifically in Olifantshoek, Velgelier, Dibeng, and I think the other area is the Deep Kloof. Now, we have the pictures of these beautiful structures. If you look at what these structures look like before and where we are now, we are again using a local contractor that is the main contractor, and we've got quite a number of local, Olifantshoek-based subcontractors, some of whom are responsible for foundation to finishings in the houses that have been allocated. Is also an important empowering initiative. We've got 9 SMEs that are supported. You can see that that's the tune of about 16 million. The assistance to the main contractor that I spoke about when we're talking about Chrome Mines is in the order of 19 million. The budget for this is 65 million. We've spent almost 28 million in this project. Again, this project is going to be delivered by end of first quarter next year. Would have done all of these houses. Some of the houses are now ready for occupation. I was sharing with the chairman that whilst we're busy with just finishing touches, some residents had put up curtains, as you can see the one in the picture, and were pushing us out to move in whilst we're doing the snagging. So this, I think, is a great exposition of the strength of partnership, because this we're doing together with Gamagara local municipality, because resettlement is essentially their competency, and it has worked very well and has delivered a much needed service delivery aspect to this community. And we are hoping that other entities that are active in the area, mining companies and renewable energy projects, can follow suit and eradicate this incidence of asbestos roofs in the area, which have, in certain instances, been termed to be dangerous. And again, the quality of the houses, as you can see, is much, much, much improved. And we're looking forward to decent outcomes in this area. So we're very proud of this, and we are going to finish it and make sure that the community there, the vulnerable in the community there, are protected. We also have the Barbertas Bulk Water Supply and Articulation Project in Barbertas. Barbertas is about 15 km outside of Katu. It's a relatively new settlement with the CPA in place. Again, the approved budget there is 21 million. We spent in total last year and this year about 7 million. And 40 jobs have been created in there, and there are plans of allocating 30% of the value of the project to local contractors. We're making great progress here. We're hoping that by end of the year would have significantly completed what is required here. There is a strong local labor component and a strong local SME component here. Again, we are providing access to clean potable water for this community that has just been resettled. So we're making sure that we implement equipment and a water reticulation system, again, together with the Kamagara local municipality, to make sure that the people of Barbertas can have access to safe drinking water. And the last project here is our long ongoing relationship with the Department of Roads and Public Works and in Kimberley. You will know that in 2015, 2016, we contributed to the conclusion of that 12.5 kilometers, N14 to Ditagong. Now we are focusing on, and also the Lexi bit, which we are now proud to finish from where we stopped at Patsto, and we're going right into Lexi village. So we are, again, this approved budget for this project is 77 million. We are about 15 million. This project is being managed by the department. We are providing oversight and we're providing funding for our bit. So we are going to make sure, again, that this very important artery that connects Jomorolong is completed so that the community can benefit. So these fall within the infrastructure aspects of of welfare. And the last one that I'm going to talk about in infrastructure project is the upgrade of Northern Clinic. So those of you that come from Oliphant's Hoek will remember we did something similar in Oliphant's Hoek with the CHC there in town. This is a similar project. And again here, the approved budget was 25 million. We've spent just shy of 17 million here. We've provided 5 maternity beds, 5 consulting rooms for professionals. We've improved the reception area. At the peak of this project, we had 47 jobs and 7 SMEs benefited. And again, we used strictly local contractors from the Limpopo province. And this is also importantly a partnership with a trust that is associated with Anglo American Platinum. They contributed 5 million and we contributed the balance. And this has worked very well. I think the new unit there has been in operation for over 4 or 5 months now, and it's an essential service for the people of Northam. And then again, we have just a few others. This is not infrastructure, but this is quite an important project looking at screening and operating for cataracts to restore vision, especially for those of us that are now elderly. We have a budget here for 3.2 million. We'll talk a lot more about this because we want to encourage Baholo to participate in this project to restore sight. I have a 75-year-old uncle that is really struggling with glaucoma, and if he was coming from our beneficiary area, he would have benefited from this. And then we come to our other leg of what we do at SIOC-CDT. I mentioned that because we want to strengthen household income, we are focusing on Education, we've spoken about education. We're focusing on health and welfare, social welfare, which looks at providing a security blanket over the communities to protect the vulnerable. We also have a key focus area, which is enterprise development. Now, this has been particularly difficult. We have a lot of relationships here with our business forum partners and our SMEs that we now have personal one-on-one relationships with. I have here on the slide the spread of our initiatives, which I will talk to. The budget, the open budget, this is projects that are approved, is about just shy of 30 million. In 2020, we spent 10 million. Year to date, we've spent 9, so we're almost at 20 million here. And we are going to do more. It's a growth area for us, it's a learning curve, and we need to make sure that together with our business beneficiaries, we can sit down and identify and fund initiatives that will take root and make a difference. Let's come to the numbers. We have a relief fund. Now, the relief fund requires a little bit of explanation. Our thinking about the relief fund, which is the top left, was that during COVID-19, with the government-imposed lockdowns, a lot of active businesses in the area suffered shocks because they had to close down. Some of whom could not get income because there was no trading because of the lockdown, especially level 5. So by the time we got back to level 3, level 4, the level 3, level 2, and 1, a lot of businesses had suffered irreparable harm. So we put together a proposal to the board to allow us to assist businesses that were in operation before COVID, that suffered harm during COVID, that were clear about what was needed to revive them to trade post-COVID, what we thought was post-COVID. Now, we had an approval of 17 million. We have disbursed 15 million. Applications closed in, I think, in October or just before October, and all of applicants have been responded to. There's probably a few, probably less than 20% that have not yet received funding, but for all intents and purposes, this fund has closed. What the relief fund is not is, one, it's not an open fund because it is closed. Secondly, it was not aimed at becoming a DFI or development funding institution, meaning now it disburses loans and it provides funding for all businesses, specifically startup businesses. Why we set up the relief fund was to help businesses that were in operation before COVID, suffered harm during COVID, were clear about what was needed to revive them. So the documentation required needed to address those 3 most important points. And now the fund has closed. So it's not an open-ended scenario where applications are still being entertained and all sorts of businesses are being, especially those that were not in operation during COVID. Now, if we go to the right-hand side, we have a growth fund that is coming in 2022. Again, I need to emphasize what the growth fund is for. The growth fund is aimed specifically, this has been approved by the board, is aimed specifically at those entrepreneurs that have what is called purchase orders. And they require short-term funding to acquire the materials that are needed to supply their customers. So for instance, you have a purchase order to supply drill bits to Sishen Mine, and you need some money to acquire those. And it's a short-term funding because as soon as you deliver within the payment period, you're going to be paid back. You pay back the loan with the cost of that loan, and then you take your profit, and on it goes. So this growth fund that we're going to start in the new year, again, is not a general loan book. Because you must also remember, SIOC-CDT is not a credit granting organization. We don't have the license. So we're not a bank, we're not an Anglo-Zimele or an ABSA or what have you. So we cannot be in the business of issuing out loans. So I look at innovative partnerships with institutions that can allow us to assist our SMEs, but these things have to be targeted and cannot be general and all things to everybody, because then it's not going to be managed. And then, if we don't manage it properly, we're going to end up with a situation where there have been disbursements that cannot be accounted for properly from a return point of view. So we need to be very careful with how we manage your trust fund, which is why there are strict rules that govern these funds. Now, in the middle is the procurement portal, which I'll talk about a little bit later. We have Business in a Box, which is a partnership that we have. We've spoken about this before, I think twice already, our partnership with Coca-Cola, CCBSA, which is in Tabazimbi at the moment. We have 13 businesses that are operational, with 5 businesses that are recipients of the relief fund. Now, what is important here is that we started out with 27 applicants, businesses that were set up. So our retention rate, if you look at the national average, is very high. So we're very proud of this. But it also gives us the requirement to understand this space properly so that we can do two things. Make sure that we grow the 15 back to the original number, and we understand it well enough to export it to JTG district. So this is the work that we have to do in the new year, and we're hopeful that we'll be able to replicate this, which is a success in the Tabazimbi area. Again, we also have a Kumba Iron Ore sponsored training program that we're contributing to. We have trained 67 contractors to date, and we're hopeful that we're going to continue with this. This helps in the supplier development area, so that these guys that come out of this training are recipients of these purchase orders that we're going to fund with the growth fund. Now, we need to be able to perfect our craft, especially in funding, because funding is a very sensitive area, because we know that there is a need for our businesses to be funded. But the concomitant requirement of making sure that we are business ready so that this fund does not disappear, and you, the recipient of the fund, can then pay back so that other people can be funded. That balance is very important. And we can only achieve that balance if we strengthen the relationships that we have, and we really focus on making sure that recipients of funds get the kind of support that will make sure that they pay back the short-term loans, so that we can turn the fund over so a lot of businesses are assisted. So for now, this is what we have approved by the board, but we are very, very, very busy working on new initiatives that we're going to bring to the board. But we first have to make sure that we close out on the relief fund, we take lessons learned from that, and then we discuss it with our stakeholders in the business forums to make sure that we understand what we need to improve on before we launch future funds. This is an area of growth. It's an area that I personally think that is important to focus on as an organization of our nature, but we need to be careful and we need to be disciplined so that it does not fall into wasteland. These are the numbers of the relief fund. We've spoken about it, 17 million. We've spent just about 15. We've supported 176 informal businesses. We've disbursed in excess of 1.76 million. And we've supported 114 formal businesses in excess of 7.5 million. And that is the spread. You'll see that Khas Khonyana has taken the bulk with 62%. followed by Gamagara at 13%. We've had a low uptake in Tawazimbi and Sansabane, and we need to understand why, with 9% and 5% respectively, and Jomorolong has an impressive 11% if you look at the topography and the number of businesses that are in that area. We also, if you recall, the business forum guys in the room will remember that part of what we're doing here was a hybrid fund with the NEF, which saw us provide the grant funding and NEF providing a business loan. 7 applications are still to be assessed by the NEF. That has not been a roaring success. I think our relief fund, the grant side of the business, has been much more, has much more traction. But it's an area that we need to investigate and see if it's something that we need to look at again and bring those organizations that are able to extend credit, like the NEF, back into the area to make sure. But what will make this all a success is if we understand that business is a science, and whatever it is that you apply in the form of capital should attract a return of sorts, so that whatever it is that you're doing can be sustainable. So that conversation is something that we have to have in the new year to make sure that these initiatives gain traction. And again, from where we're coming from as an organization, this tentative move into the funding space is one where there's still a steep learning curve, but I think we're moving in the right direction. And I'm sure that the beneficiaries in the 176 and the 114 number have got positive things to say, including advice on how to make it better. So the last bit in enterprise development is our portal that I spoke about earlier. Now I'm just going to do a little bit of marketing. This is a platform that we have put up. We launched it in the beginning of October. What we're trying to do here is to create a space where SMEs can access our partners who are the vendors, and can the partners sign up on the portal, and the SME sign up on the portal. And this is the dating site where you can match a service provider or an SME with a vendor that has a purchase order. And from here, we're going to collect sufficient data to prove our assumptions on the growth fund and all that. So we really encourage those that are in business to sign up on the portal and give us your feedback on how this is going. We are going to make sure that we case manage these marriages that happen in this platform so that this can work for the people of JTG and Thabazimbi. So there is a website that is there at the bottom at the last. Please write it down and make sure that you go online and just browse through this portal and give us feedback so we can improve it if it is not working for you. Last year, I also presented our social responsibility program, which we called Kanako, which means on time. This is not an extension necessarily of our health and welfare strategy, but it is what we, SIOC-CDT, as an organization within management, think requires quicker response times. This obviously is within the delegated authorities and the allowable budgets by the board, but it requires us to address a few of the societal needs that we would not ordinarily look at, and with the kind of speed that would not ordinarily achieve, because as you know, and a lot of our partners and stakeholders know here, how rigorous the SIOC-CDT governance process works. So some of these are projects that we're able to do quite quickly. Our total expenditure in this area to date is 335,000. There are some interesting things that we're trying to do here, which I'll get to just now. But again, we talk about the numbers. For schools, the school uniform initiative, which, as you know, is an important one at the beginning of the year to make sure that our kids are comfortable and appropriately dressed for the rigors of going into the classroom. The numbers speak for themselves. We've touched 335 learners that have received school shoes. We've assisted 11 schools, 14 and in 2020, 335 learners in 2020, 14 schools across our communities in 2021, 11 schools in 2020, and in 2021, we have touched 272 learners. So again, on the right, we're talking about beneficiaries, and the numbers are there: 114 Jomrolong, 32 in Tabazimbi, 40 in Sansabane, 20 in Khamahara, and 44 in Khazikhonyan. Another initiative that we're very, very proud of, that we're really committed to, is that of bringing their dignity to our girl children with sanitary towels. Again, the numbers are there. I'm not going to read them, but we're addressing school absenteeism. We're also creating a platform to destigmatize the situation, especially to the younger ones that are experiencing it for the first time, and increasing the confidence and participate in sporting activities. As you know, this usually traumatizes girl children and they withdraw. And that also then impacts on their performance in the classroom and socially. Here, the total expenditure excuse me, is 286,000, and it is what we're going to continue to do. We've donated over 9,000 dignity packs to, this to date, since we started this, we are touching on about 20,000 dignity packs, with 756 girls receiving them every quarter in 2020. And then we also have what we do routinely for Mandela Day, 311 individuals benefiting from various things, face masks, sanitizers, branded blankets. We had a soup kitchen in Mapoteng, and we did postmates bag food parcels. So this, again, as you know, is what most organizations do, but we are at Mandela Day. We've spent 453,000 in this area. But these are communities where we live, where we interact on a continuous basis, whilst the PR happens on Mandela Day, but all of the activities providing support endure right through the year. So this, for us, is quite important because it also keeps us in touch with our beneficiaries, especially the vulnerable and elderly, and also the younger members of our community. So we are going to continue with Ganako, with obviously the approval of the board. There are certain things that we try and do, some of which are new, like this one. Those that are into sports are well aware of the success of the Postmasburg-based Hungry Lions soccer team. We're very proud of their achievements. Glad Africa is a national league. We do know there is not a lot of teams within our beneficiary areas that are sent to these national leagues. So we're quite encouraged by the success of Hungry Lions. One question that I need to answer is that sport sponsorships is not necessarily a focus area for SIOC-CDT, which is why we are not sponsoring teams in any discipline. But being a community-based organization, we do respond to cases where we need to have a rethink. Now, a team coming from our beneficiary area, winning the ABC Motsepe League and ascending to a national league requires us to question ourselves as to our context and our relevance to the community and what our commitment is to excellence in our community. So this is what this made sense for us to say, look, and I will just remind you of that chap that came second in Idols, I think 3 or 4 years ago, the excitement that generated for the province as a whole was a lesson for all of us that we actually need to start visualizing our province from a perspective of excellence. We need to start associating ourselves and finding those initiatives that will grow excellent outcomes from young, and it's an area that we need to develop as SIOC-CDT to understand it better. But of course, we had an opportunity with Hungry Lions. It's not a cover-all sponsorship. And of course, there are some alignment points that we have here. We negotiated an agreement to provide accommodation support for their home and away games. And in fact, this was based on the fact that we convinced them to use our hotel in Kathu for home games, so it made the conversation slightly easier. So what we have as a relationship with Hungry Lions for the current season ending in May 2022, which we have negotiated also with our board to allow us to put this toe in the water to have a look at what this looks like, and it ends in May 22, focuses only on accommodation. And obviously, when the team is playing in Kathu, they stay in our hotel. But as being a national league, they also have away games. So we support them with providing accommodation support there as well. We wish them well for the rest of the season. We are quite confident that they will be promoted into the National Premier League, and we look forward to that. And we're quite excited that we are a small part of their excellent journey, and we're looking forward to other teams in our beneficiary areas to perform as good and also ascend. And we want to be part of those sort of outcomes as SIOC-CDT because we believe that we can and should contribute to excellent outcomes in our beneficiary area. So I come to stakeholder engagement, which is the last part of what we do, which is where we talk about how we're engaging with our stakeholders, yourselves, and what we engage about. This slide clusters our key stakeholders on the left and also on the right, and in the middle, the kind of issues that the 2020-2021 year had. So we've clustered quite a lot of issues into there. There was engagement on project-specific issues. You will understand that when there's a construction activity, you have CLOs, you have the municipalities, you have you have the contractors, you have the subcontractors. So a lot of that, and also the community. So a lot of that took place for the projects that are in the block at the bottom. We also want to highlight the engagements that we have on the collaborations that I spoke about on COVID-19, which led to us delivering a contribution in that amount for the COVID-19 response. There we have our partners, Kumba, Kolomela Mine, Northern Platinum, quite a lot of that. And then we've engaged stakeholders in all of the municipalities and the government sector departments, provincial departments, and subject matter experts across the spectrum on the issues that are in the middle. The one engagement that I want just to spend a little bit of time on is that in the second quarter of 2021, we had an emerging issue coming from the Thabazimbi municipality, where a group of concerned Thabazimbi community members engaged our donor directly, raising a number of issues that related to the ownership of the SIOC-CDT shares in the donor, our relationship with Kodisang Thabazimbi Community Development Trust, which was a representative trust established in Thabazimbi. So the issues that were raised, they were quite important and critical for the community of Thabazimbi, and we had two meetings. The first meeting was held with the donor directly, and the second meeting, we as SIOC-CDT were invited in, and we mapped a way forward that would seek to resolve this. And again, we had to firm up our engagement plan and present it to the group that we engaged with, which we're now presenting to you, our stakeholders, to understand what it is that we plan to do in Thabazimbi. So obviously, we also, this coincided with the municipal elections. So we have a new leadership at the Thabazimbi Municipal Council. As soon as COVID protocols allow, We will be engaging extensively with the mayor and EXCO on this plan. We're also going to be engaging with the provincial government, the premier, the MECs, and the district departments. And number 3, which I'll talk to in the next slide, has to do with what the chairman referred to earlier, which is the representation at SIOC-CDT board for the Tabazimbi municipality. Again, just to remind you, our trust deed requires that each and every municipality that we're involved in must have a representative on that board. That representative comes in on the SIOC-CDT board, not only representing the Tabazimbi community or their community when they're now trustee, but representing the entire footprint of SIOC-CDT. We are now also going to resuscitate the quarterly business sector, youth, and CBO engagements in Tabazimbi. And we're also going to explore weekly community radio talk show, as we are doing with Kurara FM, our media partner. We're going to do that so to make sure that the community of Tabazimbi is aware of what our activities are. And then we're going to have, of course, COVID allowing and the board agreeing, we're going to have our stakeholder day in Tabazimbi. So the first stakeholder day that we're going to have in the open platform is going to be in Tabazimbi. We're still going to get the board to approve, so you can help me convince my chairman that this is a good idea. I want to spend a little bit of time again on number 3, which is quite important and has happened in Jomorolong, has happened in Khazkhonyan, has happened in Tsantsabane, and in Kamakhara. We have a vacancy on the SIOC-CDT board, which is for the community representative trustee from the Tabazimbi community. And this is the process that we're going to follow to complete that process. First one is we're going to go into, after the meeting with the municipal council and going into the detail of the plans, we're going to start our awareness and mobilization exercise with our media partners. The next step will be the registration of voters. Now, the people of Tabazimbi, we're going to come back and explain this because it hasn't happened there. The other municipal areas are aware of this because it's happened. Then we go into a nomination process. Then we go to a vetting and shortlisting process. Then the publishing of the shortlisted nominees and objections. And then there'll be voting. And then there'll be appointment. Now, this whole process is managed by an independent election agency in accordance with the Electoral Act to make sure that there's transparency, there's accountability, and the person who's eventually appointed to the SIOC-CDT board is a true representative of the Tabazimbi community. And we have planned all of this activity by level 4 or fourth wave lockdown in the first quarter of 2022, so that we can complete the composition of our board and we can restart our engagement in Tabazimbi with our representative trustee. Now, Wakaito, with that, I think I've been on the podium for long. We can take questions, and then my team is here with me and will respond to your questions on the webcast and other forums that have been spoken about. With that, thank you very much for listening to us. Realebo.
Thank you, CEO. We have a few questions on the webcast. The first questions would be attended to by our investment manager, Karabo, and then followed by Tawi with the questions that are relating to bursaries. Thank you, Karabo.
Okay. Thank you. So I see the first question is from Mr. Delvin Ellis, asking about funding for Code 14 track. So Mr. Ellis, not at the moment. We, as the CEO has mentioned earlier, we actually don't have funding for or a funding program for a non-contract or non-purchase order related request. So what we will be doing is, as the CEO mentioned, we're only looking at the growth fund, which we plan to launch in the new year, which you have to have a contract or purchase order with either SIOC-CDT or Kumba as a pilot program in the new year. So at the moment we don't have. What we can do is that we can link you up with our partners that currently do have those products. If you can maybe send us an email on SMME support at SIOC-CDT, or you can link us on the SMME portal that has been mentioned earlier. Then I've got a question from Mr. Nelson van der Westhuizen asking about his brick making business. And this is a similar sort of question to the earlier one, to the first one. I understand that he requires a pen mixer or even a loan for that purpose. And unfortunately, as I also said, we don't have a product that deals directly with those funding requests as SIOC-CDT. We're just wrapping up our relief fund right now, inundated with applications, and the growth fund is our next plan. So what I can do for that, similarly, we can link you up with CEDA to help you who are actually our partners on both the portal and also from a business support point of view. They can also, we can refer you through our two systems, which is our email or our portal that I've mentioned earlier. The same, I've got another question from Onkarabetsi Kopoditate, also looking for a sewing machine, but I understand that this is also non-contract related, so I would give you the same response to help us to help you maybe take your application to the next stage. I've got another question from Patricia Muchwane, also looking for business office. Similarly, again, we don't have a program to assist with funding offices at the moment. We do have our Katu office park, which I know that if you can inquire, we can check for you what type of requirements you need. Maybe you can link you up there as well. I know that CIFA does have funding facilities for those types of programs. So we can link you up with that through the portal as well. Then I've got two questions from Ms. Lydia Olin asking about the loan and that she has got a restaurant and a soup kitchen and she needs to know the terms of the loan. Yeah, so similarly again, Ms. Olin, we at the moment as ED, we don't have a loan product that deals directly with those type of requests. And I think, you know, for us is to first get our house in a way that we can be able to deal with those types of applications. Right now, we focus solely on making sure that our growth fund of 20 million it performs as we expect in the new year. And then I see Resejo Eto also asking about funding of small business. We do provide, as the CEO mentioned in the presentation, we do provide support to small business. In terms of funding, though, and that support is three ways. We're looking at our business hubs. We're looking at our providing market access. We're also looking at providing business development support and funding. So for that, yes, we do provide funding, but it's not directly. It has to be specific to the programs which we've announced. And then I've got Ms. Miriam Mwalahi asking about the criteria that was used. I suppose this is related to the relief fund because she said she was approved for 100,000 but only got 37,000. It's a specific question. So what we will do on this one, you can send us an email at SMME support. Give us your details quickly because I tried to look for that for the business, but I couldn't find it. But give us that detail, and we'll be able to explain the criteria. What I can tell is that we only supported businesses that would have lost some sort of business or some sort of revenue from the national lockdown in March 2020. So I suppose that this one had a bit of an expansionary aspect to it, which we did not fund as in the relief fund. But please send us that email. And then let me see if I've got another one. Then I've got another question that came now from Orifile Tawan and Jachai, the relief fund 50 million disbursed, which company in Tanzania received from that portion disbursed for transparency values? Yes, so we do have, as the CEO mentioned in the slides, there were companies that were, I think it was about 2 or 5% in the presentation where they received a relief fund compensation or funding. So we do have that, but we will be able to, we're not able to publish, names of businesses and peoples that have received that due to our restrictions in terms of POPIA Act. So, but we can confirm that there are businesses that have received funding out of Tanzania. The next one I can see is the growth fund from TD Lurekang. If the SMME's credit record is negative, under that review, will the loan still be approved? If not, please consider this carefully in supporting SMMEs, especially that payment is almost guaranteed. Now, we will be able, in terms of the growth fund that's coming next year, to look at businesses that are under debt review. The thing that we are going to be focusing on is the strength of the business. We're also going to be looking at the buy, and that's why we're only using Kumba iron ores and SIOC-CDT primarily as a test phase, because we want to make sure that we can cover these things. So you won't be needing to not be under debt review for consideration under the growth fund. So we will be, and that's the point, because we want to fund people that are not currently fundable in the marketplace. And then secondly, what is your loan range? The loan range will be between 250 and 2 million rand per application. So we want to target the small guys. We couldn't go below 250 for now, 250,000. Sorry, I said 250, 250,000, because that requires you to be, it's another realm where you deal with National Credit Act issues, and we couldn't do that as part of the test phase. This is something that we will see emanating from the demand of 2022. I think, let me just check. Then there's another question from Orefile Tsaban in Jachai. Khasegonyane gets a whole 62%, and Puo Tanzabani gets a 5%. When will SMMEs of Tanzabani be recognized? This is something that was also highlighted in the presentation. This is with regards to the relief fund. So this was our first time doing this. We went out and did, engagements on all the municipal areas regarding the relief fund. But these are the numbers that we received. These are the applications that we saw. This is also a factor of just maybe a bit of support, added support that could have been done at that stage. It's something that we will rectify on our future products going forward. It is not at all for our intention to have that type of ratio. And I think, then Ezekiel Lehumanejo, when are we going to get our COVID relief funds? As we said, we want to actually finalize the relief. We want to finalize it by the end of this month. So what we want to do, there are some about 50 applications that have not yet received their applications. We haven't actually told them that they have been approved. We've been trying to get hold of them. So we're talking to the LED officers at the municipalities, particularly Khasegonyane and Khamagara, to try to get those applications through to our system so we can finalize that. So everybody who's approved should get all their funds within the month, within December. Sorry, I'm just quickly going through this. Okay, there's another question from Happy Diseko asking, can we please be assisted without involving NEF because their processes doesn't cater for us? Yes, so in terms of the relief fund, we partnered with the NEF, but as you know, we've taken over the grant processes or the grant portion of the fund from July this year. So we've been doing it in-house. The only thing that's still with our partners is the hybrid fund, where about 7 applications will still be done. And I would estimate that those will be finalized in the next 3 to 4 months as part of that partnership. Okay. Then there's another question from Gilroy Masabe. Why isn't SIOC-CDT deciding how much SMMEs should charge for service rendered with no room for business to negotiate? Mr. Gilroy, I'm not sure that I understand this question. Maybe you could ask it again in more clarity. And then Michael Lecare, I've also applied for the relief fund. I'm still waiting for feedback. Mr. Michael, we will look at, we've got our database where we're looking at all the people that are still outstanding within this month. So if you haven't been contacted, you will surely be contacted in the next few days. From Happy Diseko, can you possibly extend the relief fund? The relief fund was only a once-off fund that was done because of the first lockdown, level 5, where businesses were severely impacted. Now, we at this moment we are focusing on the growth fund. So if maybe the board or the stakeholders demand that we relook at that criteria and do a second version of that fund, it's something that we can look at in the future. Okay, I'm just looking at, maybe if I can hand over to Tao, because they're coming in as I speak, so maybe you can take on the first ones that came through. Thank you.
Thank you, Karabo. Just before we move to Tao, I just want to remind attendees that you have alternative methods of asking your questions. You can either call through the radio stations that are live, or you can call us on 011-581-2030. Another number, 011-966-6370. I'll repeat the numbers, 011-581-2030. Another one, 011-966-6370. Thank you. Over to you, Tao.
All right, thank you so much, Philip. I am going to respond to the few questions that I've seen on the live feed, and we'll take additional questions as they arise. Okay, I will, like I was saying, I will respond to the questions that I've seen so far, and then I'll take the rest as they arise. I will start with a question from Janine Baba. I think that this is from Tabazimbi, and you are inquiring about how we are helping people with disabilities in Tabazimbi. And the response, just quickly, is that over the past year during COVID, we have had some, some uncoordinated responses where we have donated mobility devices to adults just to try and help the Department of Health to clear the backlog they had. But as the CEO mentioned in his presentation, we now have more clarity around how we should be supporting people with disabilities. We now have a strategy that aims to support children and adults to participate economically and from an education perspective in a more intentional manner. So going into 2022 and beyond, that is going to be our focus. And of course, as we do that, we work with partners in that disability space. And the way, I just want to clarify, the way we work with you, people like you, Janine, is that we co-design some of these programs as opposed to just giving out grants. And I think that deals with the question that was raised by Pastor Lebo Ngandimang on how we support CBOs. And that's basically how we work with them. We identify specialist organizations in a particular sector, and then we co-design programs that respond to issues that are arising within our communities. So I hope that does help to respond to your question around disability as well as how we operate to support CBOs. The next question I'll look at comes from Bani Wapad. I think this is from Tsansabane. And it's a question around why spending in Tsansabane is so low. I think this was also flagged by the CEO in his presentation. And I'll answer this question in a manner that is twofold. The first is that the bulk of our spending that you have seen is on high-value projects or programs, especially infrastructure. And as the CEO mentioned earlier on, spending in this area within Tsansabane has been quite slow. One of the reasons is that we have not started touching on our legacy projects within Tsansabane, and that also includes asbestos that you also referred to later in one of your questions. And this is going to be part of our key focus areas within the 2022 financial year and beyond. But this does not mean that we have not been active within Tsansabane. There's been quite a number of programs, particularly in education, that has been happening within Tsansabane, and I think it's worthwhile mentioning that because education is not very visible, like the CEO mentioned earlier on, that may have contributed to the fact that you don't see it on the ground, but it is actually happening. And 2022 and beyond is going to be focusing on some of those infrastructure projects within Tsansabane. I think later on the CEO will touch on some of these issues that I'm mentioning. My next question, the next response will be to a question by Tsepo Letsabo, and this relates to ECD practitioners and its uptake within our communities. And what you say is that there seems to be a low number of young people taking up these ECD programs, and you want to know why. You're asking specifically whether there is not significant interest from young people. And the answer to that is also twofold. One of those reasons is that ECD practitioners, naturally, they are volunteers in the various ECD centers where they operate, except where ECD center falls within a school that is within the ambit of the Department of Education. These are volunteers and they do get a stipend. So that obviously has an impact on uptake. But there's a bigger structural change that is happening within the ECD space, where this is moving over to the Department of Education, and the qualification framework as well has been restructured. So you find that the qualification that was covering the NQF level 4 is now being phased out. I think the primary focus for the Department of Education is going to be on NQF level 5 and above. So that is obviously going to impact on the recruitment numbers as well as the uptake. But basically that is what is happening in that particular space. And we do encourage young people to do participate from NQF level 4 and 5, especially those that have matric but are unemployed. Then another question from Pastor Lebong Katibang is around whether they, based on the CEO's presentation, whether that means there won't be any new projects from the new financial year and beyond. And you also want us to touch on how we're responding to issues such as gender-based violence in schools that requires some attention. So the response to the first question around new projects is that from time to time, from year to year, from quarter to quarter, we do make presentations to the board for approval of new projects that do respond to issues within our communities. So the figure that you saw that he presented of available funding is not, that is not the end. We continuously, that figure keeps on growing, and it also decreases as some of the programs come to an end. But from year to year, we do ask for additional money, new money, to fund new programs. And like I mentioned earlier on, you are encouraged to get in touch with us if you are a CBO, a specialist organization dealing with certain specific issues that fall within our programs, to co-design some of the solutions to the programs that we should be offering. Then on the issue of the social ills, that includes GBV within communities, this is something we are busy exploring. We are running a process where we're trying to understand, from a data perspective, what the issues within our schools look like, and as well as how we can deal with this comprehensively so that we can improve teaching and learning within schools for better outcomes, for better learner outcomes. So in the new year and beyond, you may see a whole lot of some of these initiatives that deal with social ills. And what we try to do is also to deal with them from a multi-sectoral perspective, such as how we can incorporate our health and welfare initiatives into education for the for the benefit of learning and teaching within the various schools. And then TEPO also then asked around our bursaries, especially those that succeed in completing their programs in higher education, and you want to know why we are not absorbing them. Basically, what happens is that SIOC-CDT as an organization or an individual organization may not have capacity to absorb everybody that gets to graduate from our programs. But what we have done in the past is we have piloted it, and at some point we absorbed, I think, 6 or 7 of those that went through our program. Some of them are now senior people in IT, in finance, even in the programs division. And what we are planning to do from 2022 and beyond is to create a fund that specifically deals with supporting placement, so that we can assist these young graduates to secure not only employment, but also gain the work experience that's required when they join the workforce. Because our idea initially of this education initiative is to create employability. So we think that to complete the loop or to close the loop, we should participate in helping them to secure the required experience. So going into 2022 and beyond, that is going to be one of our focus areas. Then the last question that I have, we'll take others as they arise, is from Melvin Junkies from, I think this is from Tsansabane. You want to know how far is the removal of asbestos in Tsansabane. I'll touch on it, but I think the CEO at a later stage will also give a more comprehensive response. But the quick response is that we in 2021 wanted to focus on creating capacity, in-house capacity, to deal with complex programs like this. This is a construction project. It's a complex project, and we really needed to ensure that we clear the backlog of other legacy projects, so we create sufficient capacity to go into Tsansabane. In 2022, we have a targeted focus on getting into Postdin. We have done a feasibility study already to try and understand the complexities of this asbestos project. And all we now need to do is to go to the board and ask for the required amount of money so that we can start getting involved, knowing that we have now created that capacity that's required when we complete the 3 schools in Tabazimbi, when we complete the housing project in Olifantshoek and Dibang. So, Rifile, those are the questions that I have for now. I will take others as they arise.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. I'll just thank you for the questions. I'll just deal with those that I can deal with. Melvin, the asbestos removal in Tsansabane, as Tao has mentioned, has not gone to the board yet. We still have to prove a project. We've done the feasibility. I just want to correct that it is not a legacy project as we term them, but we certainly have finished with the feasibility work. Depends on how our presentation to the board is met. So it's not an approved project, and I need to be very clear about that. If the board approves, then we will commence. And Tao is correct. We cleared the decks with the projects that had been approved, and we'll have the capacity then for new projects. But again, we have to prioritize in an environment of finite resources. You also ask about the general budget of SIOC-CDT, how is it divided or shared in terms of operations, and how much is being spent on the host communities. I think the issue of host communities, Melvin, we've debated many times. I have explained to you and the leadership of TLBF that the board of SIOC-CDT has got a responsibility to approve community development projects and the entire footprint, irrespective of where Kumba operations are located. When we reported here, we reported on the spend last in 2020 in Tanzania and where we are year to date in 2020 and where we are year to date 2021. So that detail is available in the presentation. Also, Refilwe will mention that our social impact report is coming out and all of that detail is going to be there. But I think the emphasis must be made on that. The point that only Kumba host communities should get priority is not well made, because the trust deed joins us and the board of trustees specifically to look at the entire footprint. I did mention in my presentation that we're well aware and we've informed the board. I have informed the chairman that we are behind in Tanzania and it will be receiving the kind of priority. So maybe next year, this time we'll be having a different conversation. There's a question from Refilwe about a satellite office in Tanzania. Refilwe, I think the world is moving away now from bricks and mortar offices. So, because we are able to access SIOC-CDT from wherever you are digitally. We've improved our telecommunications. Now our office lines ring on our cell phones. So you do have access to us from wherever you are. So there is no need to be investing in bricks and mortar office space. The next question that I'll deal with, Refilwe, is from Colin Muchumi. Since Hungry Lions has moved from Kathu to Kimberley, what's your contribution towards that, since they will no longer be playing homes in Kathu? We are aware of the requirement, I think, from SAFA to move the home. I'm not sure if it's for the rest of the fixture. As I said, our agreement with them is to cover their accommodation cost wherever they are playing in the country, so that we will continue. What we are not authorized to do is to participate in transportation. We are only involved as an accommodation sponsor, so that should cover the issue of buying a bus. And I have explained this to Pasi. He's very well aware of the extent to which we are supporting Hungry Lions in this season, and we are in agreement. Happy Disego, thanks for your question. In Motibistad, there are houses with asbestos roofs. Again, how it works is we engage with you, the community leaders and the community members, and together we decide what means priority, and it goes to our board, and the board exercises its wisdom that in an environment of finite resources, are we going to be able to have the capacity and the wherewithal to do that? We certainly, give you an example, we're finishing Oliphant's Hook this year, or in the next year, first quarter. If the board approves Tansaban, we certainly will not going to have capacity to do Motibistad as well. So again, I've said this quite a number of times that we have realized the theory of limitations at SIOC-CDT. We don't take more than we can chew, because then we disappoint our beneficiaries. So with right time and the right type of partnerships and approval of our board, Happy, we will look at that. And by no means committing my board at this stage, as you know our governance processes, so there's no way that the CEO can make a decision on behalf of the board. But I can safely say to you that in our engagements, what the priorities for Kuruman are going to be will come out in our engagements. And if that ranks high as a priority, it certainly will be presented to our board for consideration. I think the next question, Refilwe, comes from Bani. Let's just get to it. I think the reasons for the low spend, Bunny, we have discussed that we were focusing on Khamagara from an infrastructure point of view. I also think that spend is quite a nebulous term because it's type of spend that you're talking about. And we have not stopped spending in Tsansabane. We just have not been in infrastructure as we have been in Katu and Tabazimbi. So we are going to, as I've said, come to Tsansabane and look at those. But our key focus areas, as you know, are education, health, and social welfare. I think, I don't know, Refilo, if there's anything that I've missed.
I think I'm just going to summarize some of the questions for you that I think you may have missed. I'm not going to read all of them. There was a question around the term of office for trustees by Happy.
By Happy, yes, correct.
Okay.
Okay, let me take that. Happy, you'll recall in the last engagement, stakeholder day we had at Thabo Morrissey Hall, this question came up. We promised two things. One, we're going to make sure that we implement proper community representative trustee elections, and we've done that. We also said that the term for community trustees, and this came from a strong push from community members, that the term is going to be a 3-year one which is reviewable. And I need to just be clear. The board of SIOC-CDT is made up of 2 appointment processes. 50% by our donor, and you can imagine why, and 50% from our beneficiaries, and you can imagine why. Our beneficiaries wanted finite terms for the community representative trustees. We negotiated with the board. We came up with a renewable term at the discretion of the board of SIOC-CDT of 3 years. So every 3 years, the board of SIOC-CDT sits down, looks at the term of the trustee, looks at factors that they deem fit at the time, and a decision is made. And in this stakeholder day, we are going to confirm who has been reappointed and. So I hope that answers the question, Happy.
Okay. Maybe just this one, you can clap them together, CEO. It's around the support that we are giving for CBOs, empowerment of women by Gail, as well as what is our broad policy around sports, arts and culture development from Tusho. So I think you can summarize those, including there's also a plea that Tsansabane is struggling with ambulances. How can we assist the SIOC-CDT and the level of high unemployment?
Okay, the CBO aspect was dealt with by Tao. We don't have a refined sport and culture policy, and that is the truth. Our foray into Hungry Lions is a toe in the water. What I can say is that we have realized that for the longest of time, we have not looked at that aspect of life in our communities, and that we see the importance of it. It drives the excellence question that I raised earlier, and it also drives the morale within the communities. We have done limited participation in sports with the Oliphants Hook facility, but we certainly have not graduated to running programs. An area of development for us, and together with you, our stakeholders, we are going to be able to get to a place where we can prioritize the kind of programs that can create the greatest level of impact. I've said many times before that we are not skilled in all aspects, and some aspects we need to learn, and sports and culture and arts is one such area where I can say we will get the support of our chairman and our board if we focus on that area, but it needs to be programs that can be scaled, programs that can focus on meritocracy, and programs that can actually deliver an impact. So that would be the answer to that. I think women projects or focus programs, not specifically, but they are in the social, in the health and social welfare environment where there are programs that are focusing on women, and is another area where we can develop and scale up. Anything else?
No, CEO, I think most of the questions have been covered. We don't have, it has been confirmed that we don't have any questions from any caller. Perhaps I should just make an announcement that the presentation itself and the recording will be uploaded on our Facebook page as well as on the our website. And then community members or stakeholders would still have an open window period of 5 days next week to interact with the presentation if there are any further questions. And also to notice that our social impact report would also be published tomorrow during the course of the day on our website. A link would be shared on our social media pages, and you can interact with us on both the recording of the presentation as well as the social impact report. Thanks, CEO.
Thank you. Once again, we come to the end, and I would like to just take this opportunity to thank you for participating and giving us the opportunity to present to you. I just would like to emphasize again that we are in the midst of what looks like a fourth wave, so let us stay safe, follow the protocols and the guidelines, and avoid super spreader events. And with that, I wish you a very safe festive period, and we look forward to further engaging with yourselves on the issues that we raised today and getting feedback on our social impact report so that we can improve on it next year. To our chairman, thank you very much for making the time, sir. We really appreciate your presence, and everybody that has logged in, we really do appreciate your participation. Thank you very much. And God